Hello, good morning everyone. This is Uncle Yeow and the Singapore story. Today, as you can see, I'm wearing a online t-shirt. What does it mean? It means that congratulations to Mr. Taman for being the ninth president of Singapore. Voila! Alright. Now, today Uncle Yeow is going to share with you more about the national defense and security of Singapore from independence. Okay, currently we are now on top of Woodlands Town Park East. Now this is a very appropriate location to talk about defense. Why? Because this area used to be Hill 180. Now Hill 180 used to be a training area for the SAF in the 1970s. So what other place than this particular location to talk about our national defense? Now in 1965, after we became independent, one of the critical important issue that we had to overcome other than housing was our defense. And why defense? Because we have just came out from the Indonesian confrontasi from 1963 to 1966. Now over 42 locations in Singapore were bombed during this period. And of course, the most significant one was actually the McDonald House bombing by the Indonesian Marines. Now, in that particular incident, 3 persons died and 33 others were injured. So this is actually a proxy war. And that really accounts for why it is so important for us to be able to manage our own defense after independence. Now, by 1965, once we became independent, the British will withdraw all their troops, and then security will become a major issue for Singapore. Like I say, because of confrontasi and because our neighbors at that point in time were not exactly friendly, and therefore we had to embark on our defense. Now, our defense strategy at the time was not easy. We couldn't afford a full-time regular professional soldier, army. So what we did was the next best thing. In 1967, we started national service. So all males reaching 18 years old will have to go and serve the army for 2 years, go for training, and prepared to defend the country. In fact, in the early years, when I served the NS, for those with higher education, and if you are corporal and above, you have to serve 2.5 years instead of 2 years. So that's how national service got started. Now, in the beginning, the Chinese were quite resistant to national service. Why? Because there's a saying in Chinese, 好男不当兵,好铁不打钉. What does it mean? It meant that as a good person, you don't become a soldier. A good piece of metal, you are not supposed to nail it. So, 好男不当兵,好铁不打钉. So how did we overcome this setback? Well, the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce actually came up with a brilliant idea. They actually minted 900 coins or medallions. And behind it, there is an inscription known as 尽忠报国. What does 尽忠报国 means? 尽忠报国 means to serve your country, to protect your country with full loyalty. Now, this particular phrase actually came from the southern Song dynasty. During that period, there was a very famous Chinese general by the name of Yeow. Now, Yeow's mother, when he was young, the mother wanted Yeow to be able to be loyal to the country, to protect the country. She therefore tattooed on his back these 4 words, 尽忠报国. So from here, the lesson is that all should actually serve the country with loyalty. Now, these 900 medallions were then given to the first batch of NS enlistees. Alright, the first 900 NS enlistees. And that's how we overcame the initial reluctance to do NS. Now, in the beginning, Singapore, we actually asked a lot of countries for help to help us build up the SAF, but most of them rejected. The first to reject was actually Egypt. We approached Egypt to help us with our national defense. However, President Nasser, who is actually a friend of Lee Kuan Yew, said, sorry, because your neighbors are all Muslims, so they are my brothers, so how could I help you with your defense? So we were actually turned down. The next country was India, and India, even more remarkable, they just came back with two words, thank you. And therefore, again, that's a no-go. Now, the only country that actually came forward very willingly was the country of Israel. Now, Israel, at that time, the defense minister was Yitzhak Rabin, who later became their prime minister. Now, Yitzhak Rabin told his generals, go to Singapore, all right, train the army to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, but don't ever recommend them any armaments or weapons. It is not about the sale of arms. You go there and you train them to be a good army, to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and that's it. So that was what happened. And the Israelis were really good when they came to train our initial NS men. But Israel, again, here was very controversial at the time, so much so that we had to give them a code name. And the code name we given to them was Mexicans. So the Israelis were known to us as Mexicans. Maybe they do look like Mexicans, I do not know. So that is how we started our national service. Singapore's defense strategy, the platform, is actually based on the two principles of D and D. Now, what does D and D? D and D means diplomacy and deterrence. Now, diplomacy, it means that you must always maintain an open communication with everybody. You'll continue to talk and talk and talk. Even until the cow comes home, you continue to talk. You do not just go to war or resort to warfare. So that's diplomacy. Very, very important. If you look at the Russian-Ukraine war, it's actually the breakdown of diplomacy. That's why the war started. So number one, diplomacy. Number two, deterrence. Now, what is deterrence? Deterrence is actually you flex your muscle, all right? Now, you want to show off to your potential enemies what your capabilities are. So in the case of Singapore, you notice every National Day, we will always parade our best weapons, be it F-15, F-16, F-35, be it Leopard 2 tanks or Broncos, Bionics, all the armored vehicles that we have, be it our frigates, all right, corvettes, and all the warships that we have, even submarines that we have. So that is to show others what capabilities we have so as to deter them from any possible aggressive action that they may take. Now this is important because it is only through diplomacy and deterrence that we can actually avoid war. And the biggest advantage of any defense strategy is actually not to have war. The moment you have war, that means you have failed. So that is our defense platform. And Lee Kuan Yew actually gave Singapore a very important military strategy. And he called it the poison shrimp strategy. Now what does poison shrimp means? Poison shrimp means because we are a small island, we are like a small shrimp. We are surrounded by big fishes who wants to gobble us up at any time. So to prevent that, we have to make ourselves to be very, very, very poisonous. So to do that, that is the reason why we invest so much in our national defense. Now, in terms of our national defense budget, we are actually the biggest in Southeast Asia. Singapore spends about 3% of our GDP on defense, much bigger than even Malaysia or Indonesia. Okay? Now, why do we spend so much money on defense? It is critically important because it actually gives confidence to potential investors who want to invest in Singapore. The stability, the assurance that Singapore is actually a country that is defensible, and we concentrate a lot on our defense so that nobody will ever dare to think about going to war with us. So this is critically important. It is actually to protect our way of life. So for potential investors, this is one major consideration before they put their money in Singapore. So just remember, poison shrimp strategy. Now, it is by being very poisonous that people will consider twice before they even bite you. And even if they do, for all you know, they will die even before we do. So that is what we have. So for today, I will just stop here, and I'll continue in the next episode to talk more about our defense strategy, and not only that, our total defense platform. Okay? So this is Uncle Yeow saying thank you very much and goodbye.